There's a Hasidic teaching that for a holy person, a coin accidentally falls out of their pocket and finds its home in the pocket of a needy person. And the great question is raised, is that an unconscious act or was that intended? This is the kind of reverse or the converse of the fact that most of the hates, most of the sins that we're banging our chest about, are considered to be unconscious sins. And what does that exactly mean? How do we reverse our lives from unconsciously not being in touch with our effect on the world around us and being in touch with God? How do we turn it around so that we are unconsciously in touch with God, the world around us? How do we create a life where our unconscious actions are walking with God? How do we live the life that is good, the life that is the goal of tshuva, turning to be on a path, walking with Adonai? I ask you to pay attention. You could even do it while I'm talking. I take no offense to page 306 of the Machzor. So much of the liturgy today and on Rosh Hashanah is different from our normal liturgy, especially in the Amidah. And yet, the rabbis made it so that just like 3 times every day of the year, Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah are not excluded, that we still do the Modim prayer. Modim anachnu lach. Translated, we thank you, like the word todah, but maybe better, we acknowledge you. Al chayenu hamisurim biyadecha, for our lives that are in your hands. The al nishmotenu hapikudot lach, for our souls that are taken note by you. The al nisecha shebechol yom imanu, for your, and this is where it gets tricky, your miracles, your signs that accompany us each day. V'al niflotecha v'tovotecha shebechol eit erev v'voker v'tzaharayim, and for the wondrous events and moments of goodness that are happening in each of these times, each moment, each evening, morning, and afternoon. Hatov chilalu rachamecha v'amrachim kilotamu chasadecha me'olam kivinu lach. The presence of good are you. The bestowal of compassion never stops. The caring and the love are never ceasing. From eternity, we place our hope in you. The key word here is nisecha, almost always translated your miracles. But do miracles really accompany us all day long? Are we so special that God is intervening in the laws of nature just for us? What if the word nes does not mean miracle? And what if the rabbis of our tradition have been trying hard to tell us this, but we've been missing it through some combination of pediatric Judaism, Christian influence, and lack of study? We have a holiday, do we not, whose only commandment is to publicize the nes, publicize the miracle. But have you ever looked closely at the language of the bracha that the rabbis wrote for us to say? After blessing the Hanukkah lights, we recite, "Blessed are you, Adonai our God, who governs the universe, who did nisim lavotenu bayamim hahem ubazman hazeh." Nisim, who did miracles for our ancestors in their days and in this time. Why are they making us talk about miracles in this time? What does it mean? If we're celebrating the miracle of the oil lasting, what does that have to do with miracles today? And why is miracles in the plural? Like al nisecha shebechol yom imanu in modim, 3 times a day in our Amidah, for your miracles that are every day with us, morning, noon, and night. So what if the word miracle is a little too poetic, a little too fraught with baggage? The truth is that there is no word for miracle in Hebrew as we understand it today, not in biblical Hebrew. The word we translated as miracle is the Hebrew word nes, and it means something lifted up above the ordinary, something extraordinary. And in its simplest translation, a sign. A sign is very different from a miracle. First, a sign can be thoroughly natural and does not require a change in the laws of nature. Second, a sign never becomes a sign until someone reads it. And third, a sign is ineffective if the person reading it doesn't follow it. The Torah argues against the view of miracles as supernatural proofs in Deuteronomy 13, 2-4, where God declares that a nes does not prove the cause of a prophet or religion, since they may be produced by prophets of untrue religions or other belief systems. These nisim don't validate someone's truth claims. Or religions or persons' claims about the world, the Torah states, have to stand on their own. The rabbis added to the skepticism of supernatural proofs when they declared that the Red Sea could not have parted for the Israelites the way it did if God had not designed seas that way in the first moment of creation when the laws of nature came to be. Genesis Rabbah and Shemot Rabbah. When you think about it, this is an extraordinary theological statement. All miracles necessarily follow the laws of nature. So how do we notice them? A nes is an improbable occurrence whose improbability is an invitation to investigate them, to read them as signs pointing us forward according to what God has in mind for us. The parting of the sea, maybe it wasn't supernatural. What if it was a drop in water level preceding a tsunami following an earthquake, very common in the ancient world, especially in that area? Maybe if it wasn't supernatural, but it was a sign that we were to seize this opportunity to claim our freedom for the plan God had in store for us, rather than follow our instincts to return to the security of slavery. It was a sign pointing forward to walk with God. Signs are these miracles, they're improbable, holy coincidences that point us toward a path of holiness, toward the next step in God's plan for us. This leads to the second aspect of Jewish miracles. A sign never gets to be a sign without a reader. We all know the saying, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around, does it make a sound? The Jewish version would be, if there is a nes and no one notices it, was it ever really a sign? Hermeneutics, the philosophy of interpretation, tells us that a book without a reader is an incomplete circle, a meaningless half. The Jewish version would be that without a Jewish people reading and living a Torah, the Torah is a meaningless half, never getting to be a Torah. The partnership is what gives it life and meaning. In Judaism, a miracle is not a divine interruption in nature. It's a way of opening our eyes to the world and our path in it. Miracles don't tell us about God. They tell us about ourselves. So I know some of you are thinking, I'm troubled by this. God caused that sea tidal wave thing, not nature. So what I believe the rabbis are inviting you to do, this is theology standing on one foot. Let's see if you fall down, or I do. If I said that caused the insulin to rise in your body, and you said, that didn't cause the insulin to rise in my body, that gland caused the insulin to rise in my body. And I said, all I was saying was the body caused the insulin to rise. I'm not denying that the gland released the insulin. We are part of a larger whole, the world in which we walk with God's presence. So as I was typing out this part of this Devar Torah, or this Devar Tefillah, I wrote an email to my mother. And as I clicked send, and then I shifted to something else. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I did not put the word love. So I went back to my email, and I found that improbably, somehow when I clicked send, it didn't work. Rather than tapping again and moving on, I followed the sign, added the word love, and clicked send, and immediately went. These are the improbable signs happening all around us every day, signs we usually don't even notice, but which our daily prayers, our Amidah, our Modim calls us to be on the lookout for. Isn't this the message of Hagar in the Rosh Hashanah first day Torah reading? I love to ask students after they read the story of Hagar, after they read that first day Rosh Hashanah Torah reading, was there a miracle in the story? Well, yeah, a messenger of God came forth and produced a well of water. What does it actually say? A divine messenger came forth and opened Hagar's eyes. And there she noticed the water that she was desperately craving for herself and her son. To walk with God, to deepen a sense of God's presence, is to notice that which is being lifted up, to notice these signs, to notice the extraordinary in the ordinary. When we do grow out of the superficial, literal readings of our prayers, that of a being in the sky controlling our fate, when do we step into the deeper level, that of God being the very world in which we move, but more than the conventional world our arrogance tells us is all there is? There's a biblical patriarch who put this into words. It was Yaakov lying down, putting his head on the pillow of the rock, and having a dream where his eyes were opened, and he saw messengers of God going up and going down on the stairway to heaven. And he woke up and he said, I did not know God was in this place. The message of our rabbis is we need to invite and sense God's presence in the world and in our lives all the time. We should always be saying to ourselves, God is in this place. The world is more than a collection of objects. The universe is like a body, not a derelict corpse. It's alive. And we are like cells or organs or an element in the ecosystem. Our special gift is that we are invited to attune ourselves to it, to follow a path of awareness, humility, and purpose, and to follow its signs for how to do so. So what do signs look like? They often appear, many scholars have pointed out, of religion as synchronicities. It's a time when your perceptual funnel is opened, like really having your eyes open, really having your ears open as you walk this earth, taking in more unconsciously. And then you notice the simultaneity. When Lynn and I got married, we tried for a couple of years to have a child. We got help at Hadassah Hospital in Israel and their wonderful fertility department, and it didn't take. So Lynn sold her house in Nevada and moved to San Diego to be with me. And we made a little bit of money off of that sale. Lynn did. Who's we? It wasn't my house. Gosh, back then the money seemed like so much. It wouldn't even buy a used car today. We're so grateful for it. It gave us the chance for one IVF. So we went through the process, and they told us today is the day that you're going to hear. We didn't know what to do. We certainly weren't going to go to work. So I don't know why. It's a terrible idea. We went to go see Avatar in IMAX. And I really don't know why we did this, or it's not like us, or why we ended up in this place. And as we were walking through the lobby of the Cineplex, there was an LA Times sitting there randomly on a chair. And in this hyper-aware mood that we were in, we went up to the LA Times. We were in San Diego. And we picked it up, and the headline was, "Fertile Ground in San Diego." That was the headline. And Marav came to us. I remember one Shabbat, it was Martin Luther King weekend. It was back in San Diego, and I had a little cabinet behind the ark where I kept whatever, emergency stuff. And I'd put aside a reading for the Devar Torah, and I thought I'd put it back there. And so I was really embarrassing. I'm in the middle of the service, people see me go back there, I'm rummaging around, I'm like, just hold on a second, my Devar Torah is back there, I left it somewhere, I need this to do it. And so I couldn't find it. And then on the back of like the cabinet, a sheet fell down on the floor. On the back of it was Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail. I had forgotten that it was Martin Luther King weekend, and I was going to give a sermon on something else. I don't know when I had stuffed that piece of paper back there. It's a true story, and it fell right on the floor to me. I have a friend who had a Jewish education, very minimal. Went to Hebrew school for a couple years. I'm not sure. They had a bat mitzvah. We became friends in graduate school, and she married my best friend, and we became best friends. And she wrote to me once, she's like, "Nadav, I need your help. I'm having a recurrent dream, and I'm seeing Hebrew letters." And she said, "Honestly, I have no idea what they mean. I think I studied some of the Hebrew letters. I mean, we learned the alphabet back in Hebrew school, but then I quit early. And can you help me decipher what they mean?" So I said, okay. I had to bring the Hebrew alphabet with me, and I said, "Could you pick them out from a chart?" And she said, "Sure." It's 3 letters. That's the first one, Sheen. What's the second one? It's that one, Fe. What's the third one? It's that letter, Ayin. Shefa. So I said, yeah, that's a word. And then I looked at her computer. She had lived in a little studio in Chicago, still does. And on the screensaver, back then we could set our own screensavers with words and quotes. It was the word flow, F-L-O-W, with an exclamation point. And I said to her, "I have to interrupt you. What's up with your screensaver?" And she said, "Well, me and my husband," her husband was a scholar of religion, and that's how we met. She said, "We've been working with this concept, don't practice Judaism, with this concept of flow. We read a book on flow, we're reading Zen koans on flow, and I'm trying to practice in my life just flow. Shin Fe Ayin is the command to flow." When Marav was little, I'm still little, but when Marav was little, I remember that we lived in this tiny little condo. It's magical in my memory, like a little cottage. And she was still at the age where all she could do is like crawl around on the floor. She wasn't yet standing. And Lynn and I think we'd inherited from someone in the congregation these magnetic letters, like, of the alphabet, the English ones. And so we had them like at the bottom of the refrigerator door. But she was that little. She wasn't even walking yet. One time she was playing with them, and I still have a picture. And I came back, and she had spelled a 4-letter word, all with everything correctly up. If you ever want to see the picture, I'll show it to you. And nothing else around it. Without getting too serious for a moment, I had a trauma early in my life. I don't bring it up because it doesn't compare to the traumas other people suffer. But I had a trauma, and I needed many years to recover, and thank God for therapy and other help and support. It was the name of the agent of that trauma. It's a very unusual name. And I'm sitting there, what is God trying to tell me? And I knew. I am healed. This girl, this family, I'm okay. I've been healed. Often, these signs involve the dead, the linking of heaven and earth. And I again ask you not to think of the superficial, the literal of heaven and earth, but to think of the deep way we live at the intersection of heaven and earth. I remember I had a member who, her husband died way too young of melanoma. We should all be careful. And it was very sudden. And she couldn't bring herself to go to the cemetery. I told her, it's been many, many months. You have to go. I'll go with you. And she said, if I go, I got to go alone. She said, I'm not going to drive on the busy roads. I won't have it in me. So I gave her this complicated map to take all these back roads. It was before, well, she didn't have a GPS. Back then we had those GPSs. So she called me after she went. She said, I was on my way there about to pull into the cemetery. And I had a radio station on. And just then it played my husband's favorite song. Or more recently, a relative of ours who was bereaved during COVID, he shared with Lynn and me. He said that after my wife died, everyone talks, this and that, but what really made me feel most alone was having to go back to my bedroom and know that we would never be touching physically again. He lives in Chelsea. And he told us that as he was thinking that and opening up his heart to God, he's a religious man, he said 2 deer came out of the woods and up to his bedroom window. And they mated. An extraordinary event. There's a popular author who's making the rounds these days saying that the dead are real, but it's clear that there is no God. I am an atheist, she says, but definitely souls from the other world are real. But Judaism says the dead are a part of God. That's what our tradition says. She is missing the whole point. She's getting a sign, but I don't think she's walking with God. And many will say to me, there is something called the improbable, and you just don't understand statistics. And people misinterpret the experience of the improbable as extraordinary. Someone once gave me a whole book on this, and I read it. And I've spent a lot of time with that challenge, and all I can say is, really? That's the best you got? To tell me that my sense of the presence of God is wishful thinking? The deer, the dream. And then I am left like Abraham Joshua Heschel. One can always offer an alternative explanation to make us doubt the reality of the meaning of the life we experience, whether love is real or a psychological or physiological need, whether purpose comes down to the same, a hidden root from childhood, sibling rivalry, whether perception is just electrical impulses in the brain. But Heschel tells us that religion is about what it's like to be a human being, what it's like to love, what it's like to suffer, what it's like to cause pain and regret it, what it's like to feel the presence of God, follow the signs, see them as pointing to opportunities for purpose in a higher version of ourselves. My faith, like Heschel's, is that these moments of insight add up to something. I am not a little piece of a derelict body. I live in the living ecosystem of God. So remember, a sign is very different from a miracle. Let's remind ourselves, a sign can be thoroughly natural and does not require a change in the laws of nature. Second, a sign never becomes a sign until someone reads it. And third, a sign can be misread, or one can think there's a sign where there isn't one. There's no guarantee that you get it right. That's the life. If it were so easy, who would need religion? And a sign is ineffective if the person reading it doesn't follow it. On a day of tshuva, to walk with God's presence and to overcome the sin of not feeling God's presence in this world, a day to leave the past behind, even if you missed the signs in the past, even if you willfully or unconsciously missed them and took the wrong route. There are always more signs coming up, directing you back to a path that walks with God, a path of eyes that are open, a spirit that is tranquil, a path of attunement to the whole, to the health and healing of the whole living universe that we move through, and which moves through us. Shana Tova.